Hello, I'm CJ Wellerman. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now let's get into it. I'm hoping the words I use today will accurately convey where my heart is situated when I explain why I hold grave concerns for the future well-being of my Muslim friends living in Western countries. So let me preface this episode with the following statement. I am not motivated by party politics. I hate all political parties equally, because Democrats and Republicans in the United States, along with Tories and Labour in the United Kingdom, care only for one constituent. Rich and powerful corporations, including defence contractors, environmental polluters, and the like. And while I might describe myself as a progressive because of my strong views on human rights, I shun political leaders like Joe Biden because he describes himself a Zionist. And I shun the Democratic Party because they betray their voters by not ending financial and military aid to Israel. So with that all out of the way, here's the crux of my warning. Muslims living in the West are sleepwalking into an unprecedented catastrophe. And by catastrophe I mean something akin to what Muslim minorities are currently suffering in India. Because Muslims in the West are being led into a trap set by fascist white Christian nationalists in the UK and the United States, including Donald J. Trump.
And I'm a Muslim and for you, I love you. Who's the next president?
He's a Muslim and he's for Trump, see?
I'm a Muslim for him.
Wow.
He's a Muslim. All the way. To the White House. All the way. I'm a Muslim. I support this man to the death with my life.
The man you just saw has walked into the exact same trap that Hindu nationalists set for Muslim voters in India before the 2014 elections, which brought Narendra Modi, the butcher of Gujarat, to power. You see, as hard it is to believe today, you saw a significant number of Muslim voters supporting Modi 9 years ago because they believed he'd be good for the economy and traditional family values.
Things I would like to say about PM Modi. So I was a kid, when the Gujarat riot happened, and I got carried away, and I hated him for a long time, that this man, because of him, so many Muslims died and whatever. Then I started observing, I started communicating with people, and then I realized my eyes opened up that there's so much of propaganda by the media, and they are demonizing him.
Well, nearly a full decade later, the preparation for a Muslim genocide is well underway, with Muslims being stripped of their basic human rights, subjected to daily mob lynching attacks and police brutality, and even murdered on live TV. Because the Modi regime has sanctified street-level violence and lawlessness against religious minorities. And lest we not forget that Kashmir has been stripped of its semi-autonomous status, which has paved the way for the territory's Muslim-majority population to be ethnically cleansed at the hands of the Indian government's Hindu settler colonial enterprise. This is what Muslim voters got in exchange for voting Modi and BJP. Well, today a growing number of Muslims in North America and Europe are saying the same stuff about Trump that Muslims in India said about Modi 9 years ago. Saying stuff like, yeah, Trump says bad things about Muslims, but he stands up to the woke left and never started any wars. Well, first of all, Trump carried out more drone strikes and killed more innocent Muslim civilians in 4 years than Obama did in 8. And he sanctified Israeli war crimes by formally recognizing occupied Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel. And look, I've witnessed Trump's unrepentant brutality against Muslims firsthand. When Somali refugees in Mogadishu explained to me 3 years ago how his drone strikes murdered their families.
Waxaan dareennay inaa guryaheena baabi'een, xoolaheena baabi'een, beeraheena baabi'een, godkeena baabi'een, ilmaheena dhibaato loo geysto, annaga dhan aan dhibaatownay, dhibaato meesha naga soo cararsay. Maanta hadda bacna ma haysano, guryana ma haysano, meelaan aadnana ma haysano, meelaan tagna ma haysano,
But before we go on, we urgently need your help to expose and counter injustices in the Muslim world. So please consider supporting us at patreon.com/CJWellerman. You'll be helping us bring these stories to a wider audience. Thank you. Now back to our show. Trump also encouraged the idea of murdering family members of alleged Islamic terrorists, which was a not so subtle way of signaling his approval to Israel's killing machine. But Muslim American voters are being pulled into Trump's orbit and that of the white Christian nationalist movement he leads, over shared concerns for the so-called woke liberal agenda. But this unlikely alliance between Muslims and Islam haters will lead only to one hellish destination. The same place Muslims in India and Kashmir find themselves today, and the same place European Jews ended up during the Holocaust. Muslims are sleepwalking their way into this nightmare because they mistakenly believe that white Christian nationalists are defending traditional religious values against gays and feminists, when in fact, white Christian nationalists care only about accumulating power for the sole aim of transforming America into a tyrannical Christian fascist theocracy. But let me be clear, I totally understand and appreciate why many Muslim parents hold genuine concerns about the political overreach from the LGBTQ movement, particularly in schools. I get this, and I also have a clear understanding of how nefarious forces have used gay rights as a weapon to punish Muslims and help Israel. We even produced 2 episodes on this last year. But you need to listen to me carefully here, because herein lies the danger. A vote for Trump and like-minded political entrepreneurs who espouse his politics of hate and fear under the guise of traditional family values is to write a check for the annihilation of Muslims in North America and Europe. And please believe me, I'm delivering this warning based on my academic qualifications in international politics, my experience as a journalist and activist, and my expertise in covering the white Christian nationalist movement, having spent a great deal of time understanding its motives while doing the research for my 2013 book. It's also important to understand that white Christian nationalists do not follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. They are crypto-Nazis who believe only in white power. And when they're done with their latest boogeyman, the gays, they will once again turn their attention to getting rid of Muslims.
Intolerance and anger have gripped parts of white America.
You'll be the first one to get murdered by the Muslim.
Assaults on Muslim Americans are increasing.
Your prophet is perverted.
An explosion at a Bloomington Islamic Center.
Send them back to the dustbin they come from and let them go sit on a camel.
I almost died just because I was Muslim.
We saw a number of attacks of mosques, Muslim women and men across the country completely skyrocket.
And it's also important that you understand that the Nazis didn't start by killing the Jews. They started off by getting rid of liberals, communists, and homosexuals. And the number one thing we've learned about Trump during the past 8 years is he's totally devoted to giving his most racist supporters whatever they want. Which is why the very first bill he signed into law as president was the ban on Muslim migrants.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
But should he win back the White House next year, his second term will be far more vicious than his first. And he has already signaled this intent by appointing a notorious Muslim hater to a senior position within his campaign. She calls Islam a cancer and claims Muslims are savages. She celebrates the deaths of Middle Eastern refugees and says Muslims should be forced to wear visible ID the same way Nazis forced Jews to wear the Star of David. And her words cannot be blithely dismissed as a rhetorical drill, because Trump has also called for treating Muslim Americans the same way Hitler treated the Jews.
There's also controversy surrounding one interview that he gave where he said he wouldn't rule out making all Muslim Americans register in some sort of database and carry a special ID, shades of Nazi policy for the Jews in 1930.
And let's not forget that Trump also encouraged China's Uyghur concentration camps, saying locking Muslims up is the right thing to do.
On that question of human rights, Bolton describes in the book an instance where President Trump appears to ignore China's human rights abuses while encouraging the construction of large-scale camps to forcibly re-educate Muslim minorities inside China.
During his 4 years in the White House, Trump spewed venom towards Islam around the clock to satiate his white Christian national supporters. In turn, his hate inspired dozens of terrorist attacks against Muslims and mosques in North America, including the mass shooting attack on the Quebec City Mosque, the plot to bomb a Somali refugee center in Kansas City, and the bombing of an Islamic center in Minnesota. And the right-wing extremist who gunned down 52 Muslim worshippers at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, was also a huge Trump fan. In fact, hate crimes against Muslims surged 67% from the moment Trump announced his candidacy in 2015 through to the end of his presidency.
Who else is extreme about their message and their mission and how they see themselves? With these groups, what is new is that they also completely ally themselves with the center of power in mainstream American politics. They celebrate violence, right? In any other era, they would be seen as fringe extremists. But in this era, they see themselves as protectors and promoters of the sitting president of the United States.
It's vital Muslims living in the West understand that truly liberal democracies keep religious minorities safe from persecution at the hands of the majority race and culture. But on the flip side, illiberal, authoritarian, and ultra-nationalist states are where Muslim minorities are rounded up, ethnically cleansed, and locked in concentration camps, vis-a-vis China, Myanmar, and Israel, which is the exact same fate Trump and his white Christian nationalist movement ultimately want for Muslims. But until that time, they will continue to lure Muslim voters into their trap through their culture war against the so-called woke agenda. But let me finish with this. White Christian nationalists hijacked the word woke from black activists, who had coined the term to describe white people who understand the cruelties of systemic racial injustice. It was white people who were arrested and assaulted by police during protests against the Iraq invasion. Woke people jeopardized and sacrificed their careers to publicly condemn Israel's human rights abuses. Woke people ended the Muslim migrant ban, and today it's woke people who lead protests against the Modi regime in India. You see, white Christian nationalists have weaponized woke to lure Muslims into their trap. But none of this means Muslim Americans should support Biden or the Democrats. I certainly won't be. The sole purpose of this episode is to warn Muslims in the West from making the same mistake a small but significant number of Muslims in India made 9 years ago. I hope you understand where my heart is located when sounding this alarm. Anyway, that's my time for today. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we kindly ask you please support this endeavor by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJWellman. We can't produce, sustain, and grow this show without your help, and we offer exclusive benefits to those who do. But for now, good night, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.